And we want to go ahead and get started. We've got some great stuff to look forward to tonight. We'll spend a few minutes here in a devotional period together. If anyone has not had the chance to take the Lord's Supper, that will be offered as well between the time that we end our devotional. Terry, during the announcements, will let you go ahead and go take the Lord's Supper where it's being offered, and then you can go straight to the melting pot class that you choose. We've talked about this for the past month or so. If you want to stay in here, Terry Oakley will be doing a class on things I learned in the first grade, spiritual lessons and applications that we can teach even our youngest kids, and how those lessons can influence and affect us as adults. If you go out this door and into the back classroom, that's where Zach will be teaching a class on how we got the Bible. It's a book by Neil Lightfoot, some of that material, and he'll be presenting it with his style and the study that he's done, and I'm excited for that. And then through this door and in the back corner classroom is where we'll have a marriage class, engaged or married couples or individuals if your spouse isn't here. But we'd like for everybody in that class to be hitched already or well on your way so that we can talk about the stuff that we want to talk about in there. We're going to sing number 608. If you'll take a songbook and turn to number 608 right now, we'll sing that together. Then we will have a devotional thought from Matthew chapter 6 and prepare to go to our classes. Thank you for being here tonight. Let's pause together. Let's bow our heads in prayer, and then we'll sing. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the day that you've provided for us, for the good things that you have created beforehand, that we should find them and walk in them. We ask that you would help us to have the vision to be seeking those good things, that we can walk in them, that we can be eager for good works, and that we can be pleasing to you. As we study together tonight, I'm thankful for this family and for this body that gathers together, for the leadership that has set aside this time for us to engage in these activities and for the benefit that it can serve us. Help us always to be looking for ways to encourage and strengthen each other through your word, and I ask that you would bless this time that we spend together. Help us to be the kind of people that you want us to be that city set on a hill so we can shine like stars in the night sky. Forgive us when we fall, and give us the strength to stand and try again. And we offer this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
If you would please mark the Song of Invitation as 287. 287, there is a Redeemer. 287. And as Adam said, we'll sing number 608 in just a minute. It is good to see everybody. I know we have some viewing online for Signuses. I know one young man told me earlier, he said, I did my sermon notes virtually, so I don't see Miss Shawanda, but he will be prepared, having done his notes earlier since he couldn't be here this morning. But let's sing all three verses of 608 together, please. He gave me a song. Let's stand together. Let's sing. He took my burdens all away, as the bridegroom taking the song. A wonderful song, and I can sing in my joy bells ring. He gave me a song, a wonderful song. He gave me a song, he gave me a song to sing about.
So I saw an advertisement for a study that was being taken place. They were recruiting volunteers to participate in the study. How many people in this room like to take naps? Raise your hand if you like to take naps. All right, leave your hand up if you get to take naps. All right, some of us get to take naps. That's great. I saw some hands going down and some hands did not get to go down. But we like to take naps. We think naps are good things. This was a study that wanted to test the health benefits of napping every day. And so there are some health benefits about, fatigue, about mood improvement, about productivity. There are some caveats. If you take a 4-hour nap during the day, that's probably going to backfire on you, that kind of stuff. If you take a nap and then you get up and try to go right back to bed, that's probably going to backfire on you. There are some poor practices that ruin a good nap, but for the most part, they think napping is kind of good for you if you do it the right way. And so they wanted to test the theory. So they were looking for volunteers to take a nap every day. You take a nap every day. You write about the experience, about how you felt and about how it went and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the month, you get paid $1,500 for volunteering for a study about napping where you have to take a nap every day. Raise your hand if you'd be willing to take part in the survey. A lot of people in this room willing to take part in the survey on taking naps. Here was the thought that I had after seeing that. If we recognize that done the right way, a nap is good for us, and if we've already demonstrated at the beginning of the devotional, many of us like the thought of taking a nap. I noticed no one under the age of 12 raised their hands for that, by the way. But if we recognize that naps can be good for us, and we like to take naps, why does an institution have to offer $1,500 to pay us to take naps? That shouldn't be something you should have to bribe people to do. It got me thinking about incentives and what kind of incentives it takes to get people to do things. And what I'm thinking about specifically with this thing is, this is something that we call beneficial. This is something that we say is helpful to us. If we recognize it's helpful, if we like to do it, then why does somebody have to pay you before you'll do it? If you raised your hand to participate in a $1,500 study, why aren't you taking a nap every day? That's what I'm saying. Already. Why do we have to wait around until somebody pays us? And I got to thinking about the way that Jesus talked about our priorities there in Matthew chapter 6. And this may be a bit of a stretch, but this is what I think. In chapter 6 and verse 19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but instead lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's a study in priorities. That's a study in incentives. And what I think happens, the thought that triggered in my mind was, if you have to wait to be paid to do something that is already beneficial to you, then your priority is not taking care of yourself. Your priority is money. You see what I'm saying? The bottom line there is, I'm not willing to make the time to do this because it's good for me. But you know what? If you gave me money, I'd make the time to do it. And that tells me that the priority is some cash. If we advertised that we were going to pay everybody that came to church on Sunday nights $20 every time they came through the door on Sunday night, I think the attendance from Sunday morning to Sunday night would be about 99%. Typically, we only average about 60%, 65%. Whoever's here on Sunday morning for worship, about you guys are about 65. I think it's a little more than that tonight, actually. There's a lot of you here, which is great. But if we would do it for money, we say, you know what, that's good for me. I want to do that anyway. But we won't make the time for it just because it's good for us. And we are willing to say, you know what, if somebody were to pay me for that, it'd be worth my time. And that tells me what my priorities are. That tells us what our priorities are. So what good thing for yourself or for others can you do this week that you wouldn't have any trouble finding time to do if somebody offered you $50? Go do that thing. And then don't come to me with a $50 IOU. Just do it because it's a good thing to do. And let's think about our priorities. And I'm glad that you're here tonight because we get to focus on those kinds of things together. If there's a need that you have to help get those priorities in line, if there's something that's out of whack, let us help you do that tonight. Just come forward and share that thought with us while we stand together now and sing.
Let's bow together. Dear Father, we thank you for this Lord's Day. We thank you that we're able to be here again tonight. Father, we thank you for Brooke and for her willingness to come and ask for prayers from her brothers and sisters in Christ. And Father, help us to be those Barnabases. Help us to be those encouragers. Father, help her to figure out, with your help, the things that she needs to be doing each and every day. And Father, as I've said many times, that your word says that you are the potter and we are the clay. Mold us and make us after your will. Father, help us to listen to what you're trying to tell us. To take those steps that you're trying to guide us in. Father, I just pray that you'll bless Brooke. Give her a good week. Be with all her family. We thank you for them, what they mean to us here at Petersville. We thank you most of all for your Son. It's through Christ that we pray. And amen. If you are here tonight and have not had the opportunity to partake of the Lord's Supper, it is prepared. If you go through the door to my right at this time, and someone will be there to serve you. The Bible hour will be in the first room here to my right, to your left, but to my right. Tonight. The second through sixth grades will be in the fellowship hall. Is that right, John? Okay, so take note of that if you've got little ones. Please remember all those of our number that are sick. As we mentioned this morning, Doc Willis is now at rehab. Dave Arney was hoping to come home today. Does anybody know if he got to come home? He did make it to, okay, Cottage of the Shows. Thank you. Please remember all these. Genesis will be having some surgery on her finger this week, so remember all these different ones that we've got. Junior youth outing next Sunday night after our PM worship. Be sure and sign that list. Then also Sunday morning on March the 6th. All of our 5th grade through 12th grade. We won't need all of you and your parents to stay. Lunch will be provided, but please let Doug know if you're coming so that we'll know how much food to have. And then also on March the 6th, the CP telethon. And then also we'll be having Jade Hernandez Memorial at 4:15. And we'll have more to say about that, but we look forward to sharing this time and remembering Jade. I have one card to read before we go to our classes. To our Petersville family, thank you all so much for the wonderful shower, words of encouragement and prayers as we prepare to meet our little girl. We love and appreciate you all and are beyond blessed to be part of this family. Love Drew, Kenzie, and soon to be Annie. We appreciate them. Appreciate Drew and Kenzie and look forward to little Annie being born. Let's be dismissed at this time to go to our classes. I forgot one thing. If you will, remember Phyllis Montgomery in your prayers. Her brother, Gene Curley, passed away this morning. to make it more of a class instead of the auditorium, I would love to see as many of you that would come down to at least the first 10 rows. In the middle, on the side, it doesn't matter. If you could come down to the first 10 rows. Hey, and nobody will bite you up here on the front row. Do what, Phil? Good to see everybody tonight. Thank you all for doing that. We're going to be looking at a study. I actually started, as I said Wednesday night, we used this back in the back room about 5 years ago, but Adam said it didn't matter because most people would have forgot. So, but I know some of you are smarter than that. You don't forget. But I was going to teach this in the auditorium, and I got started on it March the 8th of 2000. What does anybody know about March the 8th, 2020? What does anybody remember about March the 8th, 2020? It was what? It was the last Sunday we met before COVID. So we had 1 week. So we're going to go back through a few of these things. May sound repetitive, but I think we need to go back and go back to the start and remember these things. I'm just going to kind of view the audience here a minute. We've got a good variation of ages in here. Y'all could probably teach them a lot. The name of this book is Things I Learned in the First Grade. And I really want your participation in this class. And that's why I really wanted you to scoot up closer to the front. But this book was written by Ken Butterworth. Ken didn't grow up in the church. Ken became a Christian as a young adult through his wife encouraging him. And I say all that to say he wrote this book about things I learned in first grade, but these things were instilled in him at an early age, even though he didn't go to church. So what does that tell you? First grade's changed a lot. What did you say, Phil? Grandmother, grandparents. It tells me that influence is so important. So important. He wrote this book in 2008. He was 63. In 2008, Ken would have been 63. So what do we know about 63-year-olds? Somebody tell me. Some of you that are close to 63 or older, tell me, what should 63-year-olds know? They should know a little bit about life, shouldn't they? And experiences. They've lived those experiences. There's lived experiences and there's learned experiences. A lot of things we learn from other people. But how many of you forget things that you lived and experienced? Jim does. Jim forgets them. Okay. But most of us seem to remember more if we've experienced it. I tell you all that to say Ken has experienced these things. And he dedicates this book to his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchild. So I want to ask you the question as we start off. How many of you will influence somebody tomorrow? Raise your hand. Okay. So this lesson will pertain to everybody. You're going to influence somebody. It's either your children, your grandchildren, those you work with, those you live with at home, friends. You know, the list could go on and on and on. What are some of the characteristics that you want to pass on to these people? Honesty. What else? Patience. Kindness. Love. I had the honor to help with a funeral a week ago Saturday, Sharon Lanier. I don't know if any of you knew Sharon. But I talked to all of her children the week prior. She had 4 children. And I just asked them, what are 2 or 3 words that you would use to describe your mom? And it's amazing. Those four children, they all used about, I asked them for 3, but they used 6 different words between the 3 of them. You know what the 2 main ones were? Selfless and patient. How many people in this world today are selfless and patient? Most are selfish and impatient. But I thought that was, the third one was giving. And I just thought that was admirable, you know, that those were the first words that come out of their mouth. But he says, when he was growing up as a first grader, he says there was a time when there was a general mindset of decency. Things I learned in first grade is based on personal experiences from just such a time in American history when the yardstick for measuring goodness was the Bible. Right and wrong set on opposite ends of the scale of They sat on opposite ends of the scale of justice, and even a first grader knew the difference. How many of you knew the difference between right and wrong in the first grade? You know, we don't have to make it complex, but we knew the difference in right and wrong. A switch. My smallest grandson, now when he goes to the bathroom, what do they usually do? Little ones. Huh? Play. Well, a lot of times, he loves playing with Mo. And he looks around and sees if anybody's looking. But usually they go hide when they got to do a poo-poo, don't they? I don't know why, but they do. But he can be doing something that he knows he's not supposed to do, and he's doing this. You know, he's snooping around and looking. So, you know, even little ones know what they should and should not be doing. But he keeps iterating influence in our lives. Turn to Psalm chapter 71. And everything we look at in this through this year on this melting pot class is going to be basic things. I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know, but we're going to reiterate some things that maybe you can pass on to someone else. Somebody, if you will, read Psalm 71, verse 17 and 18. Now also when I am old and gray-headed. How many people in here is that talking to? Talking to me. Several of us. Those of you that hadn't got any yet, your time's coming. Some get it sooner and some get it later. I kind of giggled when my brother was in his late 20s and he was getting gray hair, and I thought, boy, I hope I don't get that. And it hit me at about 45, and I passed him. So, don't laugh at people with gray hair or white hair, because it's gonna happen to you. That's right. That's exactly right. How many of you have seen changes in our society in the last? Who's the youngest person we got in here? Oh, I think the little one back here. Who else is this? Okay, there's Amelia and Presley. What changes have y'all seen in y'all's lifetime? Phone. Okay. What else? What else, Presley? You seen any changes? Huh? Okay. That's a big one. Coronavirus. Okay. How about some of you older ones? What are some changes you've seen? Disrespect. Okay? I'm not even going to say what I was going to say. Anyway, we've seen a lot of good changes, but we've seen a lot of bad changes that's going on in the world today. Turn to Proverbs chapter 1. Somebody read verse 8. Proverbs 1, verse 8. Hear the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother. Wouldn't it be great if everybody lived by those things? How many of you growing up followed that advice all the time? How many of you followed it most of the time, but you got away with a few things? The things you got away with, did your parents find out about it? Yeah. Yeah, they did. Somebody read Proverbs 22, verse 6. How serious is that verse? Does it tell us that they won't stray? No. It definitely does not tell us they won't stray. But it tells us to train up a child in the way that he or she should go. They're always going to be in the back of their mind. They're going to have those things that they know that they should do or shouldn't do. You planted that seed. And folks, I've said this many a times. You've got about 15, 16 years that you can really plant seeds. And if you wait and try to plant them at 17, 18, you waited too long. You got to plant them early, because they got to be making their decisions. Now, I didn't say they got to be making big decisions, but they got to be making decisions on their own at 17, 18. They got to be deciding who their friends are early on in elementary, junior high school. By the time they drive, you better know who their friends are. Exactly. I can remember when my kids was growing up, there were not very many church activities that Marcia and I were not at, that the youth were involved in. And I know my kids got tired of us going. And there wasn't many things that they did outside of church at different places that we wasn't there. Why was that? I can remember them asking, y'all going tonight? Yeah, we're going. We're going to go help. Why did we want to do that? Okay. I wanted to be there for one thing and be involved, but the other thing is I wanted to know who my kids were associating with. I just didn't want to know a name. I wanted to know who they were. I wanted to know who their parents were. Those things are important. And we were blessed. They chose some good friends. Ken goes on to say here, we have a big responsibility in training up children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. He says we must teach them while they're young. And he goes on to say that so many people put so much emphasis on things that they forget about one of the main things. Somebody read Proverbs 22, verse 1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Listen to a few things here about Ken. He says, during the latter part of August 1952, my mother took me to the old gymnasium located in elementary school in Oxford, Alabama, and enrolled me in public school. Two things happened that day that changed my attitude about school. I saw one of my best friends, and I met a beautiful woman, Miss Worthy, my first grade teacher. It says, from the outset, Miss Worthy made me feel comfortable, safe, and secure. I wished every child could begin school with a teacher like Miss Worthy. And he goes on to say some other things, but he was blessed with a really good first grade teacher. And he says, I don't believe everything about yesteryear was good, perfect, and right. But that was a time when people were basically decent and moral in dress, speech, and action, a time when adults taught their children and grandchildren these principles. A return to these principles will again make a difference in this world. Have y'all seen people in this world that don't have any respect for right and wrong? What's wrong with them? It wasn't taught. It's not a part of their. It's not a part of their makeup. I mean, they just have no thought for what's right and wrong. I really struggle with that. But he goes on to say, in our busy, chaotic, and materialistic society, many parents seem not to find the time to teach their children what is really important. Far too many parents have related happiness to things. He says honesty, integrity, and character are no longer emphasized like they should be. As a result, these three characteristics are fading in the sunset. And he says one of the major goals in this book is to teach our children respect for authority. Respect for authority. Oh, how that's lacking in the world today. How many of you can remember first grade? I can remember first grade. Miss Payne was my teacher. Miss Ella Payne. She was I don't know how old she was, but I thought she was real old at the time. But she was probably in her 40s. But you know, to a six-year-old, 40 is old. Or you think it is. But how many of you can really remember back to first grade? Okay. Do you have a lot of vivid memories of it? I can't remember that much. I can remember being on the playground That was my favorite time. Was PE. I got a few of them. Didn't get many, but got a few. I won't go any further than that. You only had one? Well, you were good. You got one when you got home. Yeah, that's the way it used to be. I can remember one boy in my 7th grade history class. He must have had a steel behind because he got one every day from Mr. Beal. JD, you remember Mr. Beal? God bless his soul, because this guy, he wore Mr. Beal out. Mr. Beal would say, let's go back in the cloakroom. But you know, some of us learn quicker than others. Let's get to the first lesson tonight. How many of you remember the generational workshop we had back before COVID? I thought that was really, really good. There was one thing that stuck out in my mind in that. There was a question asked that Michael Jackson asked, or he looked at. In 1924, one of the main things that was asked to parents, or what was important in your life as a parent, and what was one of those main things for their children? It was that they all go to church. That was one of the big things. When 1999, one of these same questions was asked, and what do you think was one of the important things for parents at this time? They wanted their children to do something. Okay? Those are both good. But they wanted tolerance and to be independent thinkers. What's that sound like to y'all? I mean, it surprised me. Because I don't think a young person needs to be an independent thinker until they're old enough to understand what they need to be thinking. Now, I may be old-fashioned, but that's the way I see it. Until they know, I'm not telling you need to teach them how to think, but you need to instill in them the values of how they need to learn how to think. You can't just let them be out there on their own. But let's get to the lesson tonight. I hope that was kind of the introduction. Yeah, we've got some minutes. How many of you, the title of our lesson tonight is All in Life is Not Fair. How many of you watched the BCS championship game? Alabama, Georgia. Okay, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But I was impressed by an interview with Stetson Bennett, Georgia's quarterback, at the end of that game. How many of you saw that interview? Do you remember anything that he said? I wrote it down because I listened to it and I said, that's pretty good. Because I knew that was the title of this first lesson in this book. For some of you that are not familiar with Stetson Bennett, did he start out as Georgia's starting quarterback at the beginning of the year? Okay. Did he sign with Georgia out of high school? Okay. Did he go, and I'm asking for help here, did he go as a walk-on? Okay. And then he left and went to a junior college. And then he come back to Georgia. They finally gave him a scholarship, didn't they? Okay. But he wasn't first on the depth chart. Matter of fact, when the season started, if I recall, was he not like third on the depth chart? And then did somebody get injured? Okay. But the rest is history. He wound up leading Georgia to the national championship. And the person that was interviewing him asked him basically what it meant to him to be there in this moment going through all the adversity that he had went through, to actually be the starting quarterback and win a national championship. And they asked him, what words of advice would you give to people out there? This is what he said. Keep your head up when things are not going good. You know, he wasn't a starting quarterback at the first of the year. He said, keep your head up, work hard, keep your mouth shut, because life is not always fair. That's what he said. And if any of you want to go back and pull that up, I thought it was remarkable that he said that. Keep your head up, work hard, keep your mouth shut, because life is not always fair. That's pretty remarkable for a junior in college that had all those obstacles facing him. How many of us could keep our mouth shut when things wasn't going good? That's hard to do. But he kept working hard. He showed up. And he was given the opportunity. And what did he do when he was given the opportunity? He shined. He shined. That's exactly what he did. Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 8 and 9. If somebody would read that. What does he say back in verse 8? If a man lives many years, rejoice in them all. There's going to be some dark days. Life is not always fair. We're going to have good days. We're going to have so-so days. We're going to have bad days. And we're going to have some in between. But what do those bad days make you really appreciate? The good days. And folks, the good days far outweigh the bad. We just got to trud through the bad days, get through them, because there's light at the end of the tunnel. Listen to what Ken here says about his experience in the first grade. It says the first few weeks of the first grade were bittersweet. Bruce and company was the bitter part. Miss Worthy, the most wonderful teacher ever, was the sweet part. But I still had to solve my own problems. That's what getting an education is about. So what was the solution for a stuttering, shy first grader when his peers wouldn't stop their teasing? That's tough on a shy, stuttering first grader, isn't it? How many of you ever made fun of somebody? Am I proud of it? No. No, I look back and I think, boy, that was low. That was low. But he says, as I became familiar with new surroundings, I soon discovered that the Butterworths were not the only poor people in the community. I even found out that we were not the poorest. I soon began to learn to deal with who I was and to get over it. Every little bit of strength and confidence I managed to muster gave rise to more. I began to inch my way out of the sewer. All of us choose our responses to the curves life throws. Our character handles those problems, and that character continues to change as we struggle to modify our responses. It says, rare is the prisoner who intended to spend time behind bars. Fewer the preachers who at first had the disposition and knowledge to be preachers. It says the average teenager uses the statement, life is not fair, 8 times a day. How many of y'all have ever said that? Life's just not fair. Yeah, I've said it. How many of you, when you're having a bad day, man, life's just not fair. You may not say it out loud, but you think it. Life's just not fair. There's all kinds of things that lead into that. Listen to what one thing that Ken said. This was after he'd been at school a few days, and this kind of thing was going on. He gets up this morning, he tells his mom, "But Mom, I don't want to go back to school tomorrow." I whined to her as she tucked me into bed. "Why, Ken? You've always loved school. Of course you will go tomorrow. You always learn new things at school, and you like to learn." His mother was kind and firm as she told him, "Yes, but I don't like the people calling me names." I thought to myself, Mother left the room and I cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I'd almost forgotten yesterday's problems, but they all came back to me when I mounted the steps to enter the huge hallway that ran through the middle of our school, and there was Bruce at the top of the steps. "Hey there, Butterfinger. Want to take off your wrapper and let the mosquitoes at you? They love candy, you know." Then he'll let go one of his chilling, conquering laughs. Who could have been afraid of such a jeering coward? I can tell you who, a little first grader named Ken Butterworth. Bruce's hateful words intimidated and paralyzed me. Were any of you ever picked on at any point while you were in school? It's not any fun, is it? I can remember a guy picking on me. This was in about the 9th or 10th grade. And I was still kind of a small guy. But man, he just intimidated me. That's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. So I can just imagine what's going on with Ken here in the 1st grade. It says, "And Butterfinger, Bruce wouldn't let it up. It's a pencil, not pencil. I'm telling you just in case you need to get permission to sharpen one." Then Bruce broke into a chant. "Butterfinger can't weed. Butterfinger can't weed. Because Butterfinger can't talk. Butterfinger's a dummy, a dummy, a dummy. Butterfinger's a dummy." As if Bruce chiding were not enough, Carl joined in. "Hey, Ken, how much is your butter worth?" I hadn't yet learned about Korah, who challenged Moses' leadership and was buried alive by God, but truthfully, I did think of the ground opening up and swallowing me whole. What a blessing that would have been. After all, what could a stuttering, backward first grader who lisped through teeth that had the same relationship with dentists that little Miss Muffet had with spiders respond to such persecution? No, Mother could not understand my pain because I was too ashamed to tell her. Miss Worthy was never around when Bruce and Carl sank their fangs into me. Oh, their teasing was a building of character, of course, but it seemed to me at that moment at the end of the world. But listen to this. But are you ready for a secret? Bruce became my best friend. I won't go into detail, but it had something to do with the character he helped me build. One cold February morning during recess, Bruce went into his Butterfinger chant. I'd had enough. I had to visit the principal. But that very day, Bruce learned to respect me, and he never called me Butterfinger after that. What's a 1st, 2nd, 3rd grader all the way up? What do you got to do at some point? You got to stand up for yourself. Sometimes you got to take things into your own hands. Now, I don't encourage that. I didn't encourage my kids to pick a fight. But if somebody's picking on you, there's only so much you can take. And that's what Ken found out here from Bruce. And then Bruce respected him. They become very good friends. What are some sayings that you would tell someone that's younger than you? What are some sayings you would tell them? Let your light shine. That's a good one. What's another saying? Don't count your chickens before they hatch. I used to tell my boys, and they can recite it to a T. If you outputs more than you input, your upkeep's going to be your downfall. And they all know that. You know, basically, if you spend more than you make, you're going to have issues. It's going to cause a lot of issues in life. What are some other things that you would tell someone to remember? Kill them with kindness. That's a good one. That's hard to do sometimes. Kill them with kindness. Okay? That's a good one. That's a good one. The world would all be a better place to live if everybody could do that. What's another saying? Treat people the way you want to be treated. The golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, we wouldn't have all this fighting and bickering and issues in the world today if everybody treated people the way they wanted to be treated. And I don't understand people. I really don't get it. Because most of us were raised in an environment like that. You treat people the way you want to be treated. But that's just not true across this world that we live in. Exactly. It's like he said here. One of the major goals of this book is to teach our children respect for authority, because it is lacking so much in this world today. I think I told this story in our adult class, but I was talking to a guy. This has been a couple of months, 2 or 3 months ago now. He was actually working on Austin's house, and he can't find enough help. And he hired this young person, and at the end of the first week, the young man told his boss, said, "You need to respect me." And that didn't go over too good. When he was telling this guy that's probably 53, 54 and been doing this for 35 years and knows what he's doing, and this guy was new on the job, and he was, the older guy was trying to teach him how to do things, but the younger one said, "You need to respect me." And they sat down and had a little heart-to-heart. And he told him, he said, "When you learn to work the way that you're supposed to work, then you'll earn my respect. But you got to earn my respect." So it makes me really appreciate people, young people that I see that want to work and have a good work ethic. It's very refreshing to see that. But thank y'all so much for your time tonight. Just remember, a month from now, come down and sit in the first 10 rows. Thank y'all. Y'all have a great week.